Chapter tonight, and we want to back up just a bit and note an idea. Is it available for you up there, Andrew? Working on it? Well, Proverbs 11, we've looked at this chapter in overall 4 different sections, but the focus is on righteousness throughout the chapter. Righteous incentives, righteous influences, righteous investments. And we are in the section that we'll call righteous investments that begins at about verse 15 and goes through verse 29. There we go. We want to notice something from verse 16, and as we move forward, attach a concept to righteousness, especially in this chapter, that sometimes we may see as completely, not necessarily separate from righteousness, but we don't always make it part and parcel of what righteousness really is. Look at 16, 17, and 18. Because there's a development here, a similarity in verses. A gracious woman retaineth honor, and strong men retain riches. Other translations have violent men obtain riches. We hit on this idea when last we spoke a couple of weeks ago, but we want to make a point. A gracious woman retains honor. The way she presents herself in a gracious manner, not just outward beauty, but that's going to be part of it if it's present, but generally speaking, a gracious woman obtains and retains honor. She's going to be respected. There's a negative sense here in which, it's the pretty woman that often gets honor. And in a worldly sense, there are many doors that beauty opens unfairly. But this passage, in and of itself, a gracious woman retains honor. That's a positive and a good one. Strong or violent men obtain riches. Well, they're not getting honor, they're just getting the material wealth. Their gain is focused solely on this life. Verse 17, notice another parallel. The merciful man does good to his own soul. Here's one that he's not described as gracious, he's described as merciful. This is going to connect to a benevolence. But he that is cruel troubles his own flesh. He's harming himself with the way he behaves. The point was made a couple of weeks ago that there could be an illustration of these passages by looking at 1 Samuel 25 and the distinction between Nabal and his wife Abigail. In fact, you could work your way through this entire chapter and refer to Nabal and Abigail from this point forward and several of the things that are said. Gracious woman, honor. Violent man, riches. Merciful man, he's benefiting his own soul, not just his body but his soul. But he that is cruel, he that's not merciful, he that is violent and vicious, he's troubling his own flesh. He's just hurting himself. Verse 18, the wicked worketh, that is, earns a deceitful work or wage. He's earning wages that just dissipate. They're not there. They're all for nothing. They're not profitable. But to him that soweth righteousness shall be a sure reward. Reap what you sow, Galatians 6:7. He that soweth righteousness. Here's a question. Is there any chance that this idea of soweth righteousness in verse 18 can be related to the graciousness of verse 16 and the mercy of verse 17? Let's leave chapter 11 for just a moment and notice Proverbs 21 verses 25 and 26. Proverbs 21 verses 25 and 26. The desire of the slothful killeth him, for his hands refuse to labor. He coveteth greedily all the day long, but the righteous giveth and spareth not. An attribute of righteousness is generosity, a giving spirit, a benevolent heart. Other passages could be investigated that convey a similar idea. In fact, leave Proverbs for just a moment and look at Psalm 112. Psalm 112, verse 9. He has dispersed, generosity. He's given to the poor, generosity. His righteousness endureth forever. Generosity connected to righteousness. Oh, and by the way, that verse ends in, his horn shall be exalted with honor, much like that gracious woman obtains honor. There is an honor and a respect to be given to those that exhibit generosity, graciousness. Our point is this. In Proverbs and in Scripture, there is a strong connection between benevolence and righteousness. Righteousness is not only taking the moral high ground so that I can say that I've never touched that drink, or I've never smoked that stick, or I've never... Righteousness is not only claiming a distance from what we so often consider to be the most obvious and noteworthy of sins. Righteousness involves benevolence. Yes, sir.
You recall that the Jews called it alms when you gave to the poor. And so that was an act of
Righteousness. That was not to be done to be seen of men, much like other acts of righteousness, prayer and fasting, Matthew chapter 6. Their generosity, their alms, their giving to the poor was to be done with sincerity, which actually is a very important passage to connect to verse 18, which we just read. The wicked works a deceitful work. Now, he's only earning deceitful wages. There's a facade with him. It's not all honest and it's not all forthcoming. Keep that thought in mind regarding the wicked as we move forward when we get to verse 20. For now, verse 19, we hit on this concept of righteousness in verse 18. Verse 19 is, righteousness tends to life, so he that pursueth evil pursueth it to his own death. If righteousness includes benevolence, generosity, can it be said that benevolence and generosity tends to life? And not just longer life, but better life? The life worth living? As righteousness tends to life, the life worth living knows what satisfaction is. Leave this verse for just a moment and note another that we've referenced before, but I would submit to you this might be one of the key verses in understanding the books of wisdom, and this verse is going to be Ecclesiastes all rolled into one passage. Proverbs 19, verse 23. Proverbs 19:23. The fear of the Lord, by the way, would that be an attribute of the righteous? A fear of the Lord? The fear of the Lord tendeth to life. He that hath it shall abide. Vanity of vanities, all is vanity. Does that sound like a satisfied mindset? The fear of the Lord tendeth to life. He that hath it shall abide satisfied. And he shall not be visited with evil. Our point being this, Proverbs 19:23, in short and simple terms, puts a focus on the fact that the satisfying life, the life worth living, the life that knows true contentment is a life that involves a fear of the Lord, a right relationship with God, an awe of God, a fear of God, a reverence for God. We bring all of those thoughts back. It tends to life, remember. It tends to the satisfied life. The fear of the Lord tendeth to life. He that hath it shall abide satisfied. That which tends to life tends to contentment, tends to a fulfilling life. We come on back to this discussion of righteousness as it relates to benevolence in Proverbs 11. As righteousness, and in this context, righteousness is consistently connected to the idea of benevolence. Proverbs 11:19, as righteousness tends to life, so he that pursues evil pursues it to his own death. Pursues evil. Yes. Pursues evil is going to be the opposite of exercising righteousness and showing the benevolence and kindness. But let's hone on this idea of righteousness tends to life, and that life involves contentment, satisfaction. He that pursueth evil, this is the person that's trying to find his satisfaction by chasing what? Evil. Chasing what's not right. Is God's way, God's will, and God's Word life enough for me? Can I find contentment in a relationship with Him? Can I find contentment in knowing what He's already done for me? And the reward that lies ahead on the other side of this life, to the point that I don't have to live in this world chasing the Joneses. Can I find such contentment in what He's already done and what He's set ahead that I don't have to get caught up in materialism, nor do I have to allow my relationship with Him to be compromised just because I lose things that may seem dear to me in this life? Can you think of someone who had such a fear of the Lord that no matter what he lost in this life, it would not come between him and his relationship with God? Job. Now here was a man that was the greatest of all the men of the East. Oh, Job was generous. And God's description of him was he was perfect and upright. He feared God and he eschewed evil. So much of what is said in Proverbs 11, as it hinges on this idea of righteousness, is going to point us toward the life that's satisfying, and the life that's satisfying is generous, benevolent, kind, concerned about others. But the opposite of that, Proverbs 11:19, is that pursuit of evil, and pursuing it to his death. Now, we bring it back to this thought before we move forward. Are there those who only find satisfaction in putting more money in the bank? Are there those that only find satisfaction in entertainment? They need to get their dopamine dump. They need something to capture their attention. Are there those that only find satisfaction by, what do we call it? Numb scrolling, dumb scrolling? Doom scrolling? Yeah, dumb scrolling, doom scrolling. Well, it's all the same thing. We have in our pockets devices that have apps that are specially designed to appeal to our vulnerabilities, to train us to get a dopamine dump off of looking at what everyone else is saying, or to be motivated by envy because all these other narcissists are only posting their meals that look tasty, but they're going to post every one. How often is it the case that we're trying to find our satisfaction in things other than our relationship with God? And what's that doing to our lives? What's it doing to our well-being? And yes, we can hit on this in terms of some of the more obvious addictions. When that pursuit of evil, that chasing after satisfaction by going after that which is inconsistent with God's will for us, pursueth it to his own death. How many people are living lives in misery? They feel like they're just going around in a downward spiral because they're chasing a fleeting satisfaction that can never truly be enjoyed because it's satisfaction that's worldly. We go ahead and move forward. Verse 20, rather. They that are of a froward heart are an abomination to the Lord. Froward heart. This is translated crooked, I believe, in the English Standard, perverse in the American Standard. They that are of a froward heart, they are crooked and perverse to the core, the heart, the lave, the center. They are abomination to the Lord. But such as are upright in their way, the word translated upright is translated perfect in the American Standard. It's translated as blameless in the English Standard. Perfect? Blameless? You might think of this as sincere and consistent. What you see on the outside is who they are on the inside. They're not crooked, perverse at the core, but who they are and who they portray themselves to be in their relationship with God, it is non-hypocritical. They that are upright, perfect, blameless, complete in their way are His delight. God takes no pleasure in hypocrisy. He takes no pleasure in crookedness. He takes no pleasure in showing the world one thing but being another. He takes pleasure in those that are upright in their way. You know, it doesn't take a lot to be upright in our way. Just sincerity. Just consistency. Now, being upright in our way, being blameless, and that doesn't guarantee that we'll climb the corporate ladder as fast as our secular peers. Being upright in the way doesn't guarantee that we're going to benefit financially the way that some who might involve themselves in dishonest dealings are able to do. But who are we endeavoring to delight? They that are upright in the way are His delight. Again, we go ahead and move forward. So much of what's said here hinges on the idea of righteousness. Righteousness is going to involve benevolence. Righteousness is going to involve a right relationship with God as it pertains to incentives. Moving forward, verse 21, though hand join in hand. Here's one of those Hebrew constructions that causes some conversation among those who know enough to know that they don't know. Some of the best Hebrew commentators you'll find will at least admit that there's a lot of discussion about what this means. Though hand join in hand, does it mean, is this describing those that are joining hands in order to accomplish evil? Perhaps, but that seems less likely. What may be the best description would be the way the English Standard translates this. It avoids this idea of hand in hand, as would be a literal translation, and conveys it as assuredly. When we shake hands, what are we denoting? Giving assurance, expressing confidence, whatever the agreement might be. Hand in hand, be assured is how the English Standard translates it. The wicked shall not be unpunished. You can take this to the bank. Count on it. The wicked shall not be unpunished, but the seed of the righteous shall be delivered. The seed, that is the offspring of the righteous, shall be delivered. We mentioned Job earlier. This was a thought that would have challenged Job through the vast majority of his book, or the book that bears his name. In the end, does it hold true? Isn't it interesting? It doesn't say the seed of the righteous is already delivered. Shall be. This passage and others similar to it do not guarantee a complete absence of conflict or difficulty. What this passage promises is there will be a reward, a recompense to the wicked, and the seed of the righteous can count on a rescue. But you know it's not a rescue if there was never a sense of danger. Verse 22, as a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair woman which is without discretion. A fair woman, pretty. A jewel of gold in a swine's snout. We're not talking about the sort of livestock rings that are put into the noses of animals in order to guide them and lead them, where you can hook a harness on one end and pull them around. We're talking about the kind of ring that, if you go back into the book of Genesis and you read about Abraham's servant meeting Rebekah, he gave her a ring. And it wasn't an earring, and it wasn't a ring for the hand, but it was a ring for her face. It was, as is translated in some translations, a nose ring. In the ancient world, a nose ring was considered to be an ornament of beautification. I understand that there are those that are very avidly against piercings today, and if you mention a nose ring, well, we live in a different culture and a different society, and it has a different perception to it. But when we're reading this description here in Proverbs, This is an allusion to the idea of a ring worn in the nose that was considered an ornament of beautification. Doesn't it make sense to take a piece of precious metal, lay hold on a pig, and pierce its nose? It seems a futile effort, right? As a ring of gold in a swine's snout, so is a fair that is a beautiful woman which is without discretion. The word translated discretion carries the idea of taste, an intellectual taste, a taste that pertains to discernment, judgment. It's not just cultured and refined, but the King James translates it discretion. It's an overall personality of right conduct, knowing how to discern a situation and behave in the scenario. What tends to be the part of ourselves that gets us into the most trouble? Our hands or our mouths? What part of you has gotten you into more trouble? Your hand or your mouth? Some of you are keeping them quiet right now. You won't admit it. A fair woman which is without discretion. We think about that word discretion. And yes, discretion pertains to decision-making abilities. We apply discretion when we're looking at accomplishing goals. We apply prudence when we think about avoiding unwanted goals. As discretion is used here, it simply pertains to the taste, the ability to discern and arrive at a proper judgment. That would be knowing what to say and when to say it. The what not to say and when not to say it. There's only so far that beauty goes. We have a saying, beauty is how deep? But what goes all the way to the bone? Ugly. Well, I've seen some folks that the ugly was skin deep too. But as a jewel of gold in a swine's snout, if you can picture that in your mind and fathom the word lunacy doesn't quite capture it. But if you can picture that image in your mind and grasp the ludicrous nature of that scene, a beautiful person, be it male or female, that is ugly on the inside is just as useless of an adornment. What good's that gold ring accomplishing in a pig's nose? What good's that outward beauty accomplishing on a person whose words are problematic, troublesome, hurtful, cruel, whose decisions are foolish, naive, blind, and consistently so? Verse 23. The desire of the righteous is only good, but the expectation of the wicked is wrath. The English Standard has the desire of the righteous ends only in good. There's a sense in which we can take this as encouraging the desire of the righteous is focused on what is good, what is acceptable, pleasing in the sight of God. They only want what is good. That's actually somewhat how the American Standard translates it. If I have goals and ambitions that I wouldn't dare pray to God because of them, because they wouldn't gain His approval, then should I have those goals and ambitions? If I wouldn't take it to Him in prayer, then it shouldn't be my aim. The desire of the righteous is only good. Flip side of that, the expectation of the wicked is wrath. Well, that's what they can expect. That's the outcome that they can anticipate. Verse 24, here we come to a return to this idea of benevolence, which, by the way, would cause us to want to glance back over some of the ones we've just read and consider ways that they could pertain to benevolence. Particularly, can it ever be the case that a lack of discretion results in a lack of benevolence or kindness? That jewel of gold in a swine's snout? Beautiful but not gracious? Can it ever be the case that a lack of righteous benevolence is the reason that someone is only aimed at the outcomes that are going to bring wrath? Verse 24, there is that scattereth and yet increaseth. Here's a person that always seems to be giving and giving and giving. There is that withholdeth more than is meet, yet it tendeth to poverty. This simply states a principle. And while we could spend time investigating verse 24 and illustrating it, let's not disconnect it from verse 25, because a similar principle is given with more of the motive for why the person scatters. The one that scatters or distributes or gives, verse 24, is the one in verse 25 that is called the liberal soul. This is not a political liberal, by the way. Liberal, the word translated liberal here is the blessed soul, or the blessing soul. The word translated liberal connects to the idea of bless or blessing. This is the person who is blessing others. The person who's a blessing upon everyone that he encounters or that she encounters. The liberal soul shall be made fat. We don't like that word. We see it as a 4-letter word, even though there's only 3 letters. But this is the idea of being made full, satisfied, healthy, complete. The liberal blessing soul is going to be benefited himself. He that watereth shall be watered also himself. There's a benefit to those that are giving, sharing, benevolence. Verse 26 still connects to the same line of thinking. He that withholdeth corn, the people shall curse him. He that withholdeth corn. The flip side of that is at the end of verse 26, but blessing shall be upon the head of him that selleth it. Wait a minute, what's wrong with a person not selling his corn? Well, there must be a scenario here wherein the person ought to be selling it but is not. And since we're looking at a contrast between benevolence and greed, maybe the perceived scenario is this. He that withholdeth grain, he should be selling it, but he sees that if he holds on to it and doesn't let others have it, if he doesn't sell it at the current price, if he waits a few days or weeks and makes folks do without, he can make a whole lot more on it. There's a greed within him that he doesn't sell to those that are willing to purchase at this rate. No, he's going to wait and make sure that they pay more for it. This isn't capitalism. This is something far different. Keep in mind that God repeatedly encouraged those of Israel, and He encourages Christians to realize that the more we give, the more He takes care of us. This is one that refuses to give. He even refuses to sell. He wants to find the greatest rate of return. The people shall curse him. Well, he's not going to have honor, is he? Now, he may have riches, but remember verse 16? A gracious woman retains honor. Strong, violent men retain riches. Here's one that's going to connect back right to that one that he's seeking riches, but that's his only reward if he gets that. Again, we come to 26. He that withholds corn, the people shall curse him, but blessing shall be upon the head of him that sells it. People will appreciate the person that's actually making a sacrifice by helping them obtain their needs in the now instead of waiting for his own benefit. Verse 27. He that diligently seeketh good procureth favor. Another translation of this, Kill and Delitzsch described this as he that seeks good seeks that which is pleasing, seeks that which is overall to the benefit of another person. But he that seeks mischief, it shall come to him. There's a The latter part of the verse conveys this sense of what goes around comes around, which though it's not always the case, it frequently is. The first part of this verse you might consider as an Old Testament wording of Matthew 7:12. Whatsoever you would men do unto you, do ye even so unto them. This is the law and the prophets. We always simplify that, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, right? He that diligently seeketh good, he's looking out for the better interest of others. If the King James has it translated the better way, then he's going to obtain, procure favor. He's going to receive the favor of others because he's looking out for the best interest of them. If Keelan DeLitch put it in the better way, then there's an added emphasis on the fact that he's looking out for what is going to be most receivable to others. We can usually illustrate this very easily when it comes to general relationships. But have we ever thought about this as it would pertain, the do unto others idea, as it pertains to, let's say, the husband-wife relationship? Do husbands and wives have the exact same needs from each other? No, they're far different. Even if we only look at Ephesians 5:33, let every one of you see that he love his wife even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence her husband. The wife needs love from the husband needs the reverence and respect of the wife. Their needs are different. Well, if we misapply, do whatever you would men do to you, do you even so unto them, then the husband is going to be giving the wife respect, and the wife gives the husband love, and that's not what they need to receive. This idea of do unto others will include an awareness and understanding. The Hebrew word is being, or to being, that perception that looks at something from another person's point of view. Do unto others will have an understanding that asks, what is it this person needs? What is it that would be pleasing, beneficial to this person? How's my daughter looking at this situation instead of just how am I looking at it? What would be most receivable by my son instead of what would tickle my fancy? He that diligently seeketh good, now he's looking for what's pleasing, ultimately overall beneficial to the other. There's a principle there that goes right to the heart of how we look at other people and interact with other people. Verse 28, he that trusts in his riches shall fall, but the righteous shall flourish as a branch. Well, he that trusts in his riches is going to be the one that's been described as greedy, withholding more than his meat, withholding grain in previous verses. The one that's so set on his riches and acquiring, obtaining, and retaining them that he's not distributing. But the righteous, well, the righteous is going to be the benevolent as described throughout this passage, shall flourish as a branch. Verse 29, he that troubleth his own house inherits the wind. This may not just mean his household in terms of his wife and direct descendants. You might think of this as in terms of his leadership in his house. Wife and children, yes. And how, in that day and age, it was common for there to be servants within the house. And if the Israelites were doing it the way that God commanded them to do it, then that servitude was something that could be beneficial to everyone involved. He that troubleth his own house. You might look at this in the realm of benevolence and leadership. Sort of like Proverbs 28 has the idea that the prince that wanteth understanding is a great oppressor. The one that doesn't see things from the point of view of those he's leading, he's just going to be an oppressor. Here, he that troubleth his own house. It may well be the case that he's troubling his own house through his greed, through his desire just for gain, through his mistreatment of his own house. He'll inherit the wind. It's all going to come to nothing. The fool shall be servant to the wise of heart. Once again, there's a result and a negative reward for those that follow after their foolishness instead of wisdom. Let's close this chapter. Verse 30. The fruit of the righteous. There's a very real sense in which 30 and 31 can stand as a summation for all the rest of Proverbs 11. The fruit of the righteous. His fruit is not just what he's producing. This is his influence. The fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. Not just for himself, but just as he is tending to life for those around him, the fruit of the righteous is a tree of life. And he that winneth souls is wise. What does that mean to win souls? Are we talking about evangelism here? Evangelism would fall under the umbrella, but it's only a part of it. There's a book called How to Win Friends and Influence People, written by a fellow named Dale Carnegie. He that winneth souls, you think that could pertain to winning relationships, influencing people? He that winneth souls, in order to influence others, there has to be wisdom. That's the idea being conveyed. And then another idea of reward. The righteous shall be recompensed in the earth. Yes, the righteous can expect there to be a reward in this earth, although it has to be repeated, not all fairness and justice is meted in this life. The righteous shall be recompensed in the earth, much more the wicked and the sinner. We'll call that an end of Proverbs 11. We'll pick up at Proverbs 12 when we meet next week. Thank you very much for your time this evening.